So these aren't final patterns. They kind of look like final patterns. They're my drafts. It's a undercollar and the bodice. My bodice with the lapel. That's what it looks like. And I use the torso sloper. And this is just kind of a draft, a rough draft. I made this, I drafted it, I added some seam allowance because I sewed up that little muslin. Do you see it over there? So that's what you guys are gonna do. You're gonna do a draft like this. That's what I'm gonna do right now. And then you're gonna make from the draft, you're gonna have 2 pattern pieces and you're gonna cut out muslin, a little half muslin, and sew up a test. That's what this is, that's what you're doing right now, okay? So today I wanted you to work on that after I show you. And then on Monday, Susie is gonna be our guest speaker. I'm using the torso sloper, okay? So right now you guys are just doing what I do. I want you to actually do this demos. It's a process, you're practicing, okay? So everyone's gonna use the torso sloper. For your final project, you might use something. You might use the bodice sloper if your design requires it, right? Does that make sense? So I already traced it. I just traced off everything. The first thing I need to do is establish my break point. So do you guys know what the break point is? Esther, could you grab one of the jackets for me? No, okay. Even after being in advanced sewing and making a jacket?
Maybe if you showed us,
yeah, they would have hit.
You would loosen something.
Oh, okay. Oh, you guys need to see. I get it. Point is where is the top of the button where your roll,
Oh yeah.
right? So this is the break point where this is my roll line, where my lapel rolls over. That's a roll line, and where that roll line ends, and it's usually at the top of the button, is called the break point. Okay. Gorge. This is lapel. This is a 2-piece sleeve. This is a double welt pocket. These are also called jet pockets or besom pockets, same thing, okay? All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is establish the break point and draw in a button extension, because I'm doing a button. We're all gonna do a button. So I'm doing, when you make a button extension, how do you know how big to make it? Does anyone know?
Extension?
What do I have to know before I do a button extension?
The size of the button?
Yes, the size of the button. So you have to know the size of your button. So the button extension is the size of the button plus seam allowance. So we have to add seam allowance to that so that we can connect the facing, because there's a facing. So this is my pattern piece, my front pattern piece, like I showed you. This is the facing piece right here. It's sewn to the lining, and there has to be seam allowance on that button extension and on the facing to connect them. So so my button's gonna be 1 inch. So I'm just gonna add 1 inch right now, because I don't need seam allowance, because I'm just drafting, right? We're just drafting. So I'm only gonna add 1 inch button extension, and then I'm gonna establish my break point. So I already know I want my break point to be like just above the waist, and that was my choice, my design choice. So I'm putting my button extension only up that high. I'm only going that high. I'm not bringing it all the way up. So my 1 inch button extension, and I want, again, design choice. I don't know, maybe this is good, maybe this is not. This is kind of traditional. On this one, don't be afraid to like go through your closet or go to the store and measure things, you know, or buy something. So this is like 8 inches from the bottom, you know, where hits it like, this is like high hip level. So it's like 8 inches up, and that's about what, this is like mid-hip level. So 8 inches up would be a little bit would be lower, much lower than where I have it. So, but I think this is longer than that. So, I mean, it's probably, their button's probably somewhere in here, but that's how you can figure things out, right? You can go to your dress form, measure on your dress form where you want that to be, look at other jackets, okay? And then I like to draw in my button. You know, I'm not very good at drawing a circle, but something like this, because I like to be able to see it, okay? So those are the first two things that you do. Well, number one, trace your sloper, and then add your button extension, figure out where your break point is, and then I'm drawing that in. Now I'm going to measure out from this shoulder point 1 inch, and I want everyone to do 1 inch. So this can vary, okay, but we're all gonna do 1 inch for this situation because we're gonna establish our roll line. So, and now I'm gonna connect that to my break point. So this is my break point right here where I ended my extension, and I'm just connecting these 2 points, okay, with a straight line. Okay, and then, oops. And this is one inch. Now I'm gonna actually fold this line. This is my roll line. Back. So I'm gonna try to do it. This paper is really big without cutting it. Actually, I'm gonna cut it. So, fold the other side. All the way. Folding on my roll line. And then I'm gonna transfer the neck to the other side. So this is important. Make sure you're folding the roll line underneath, because I'm transferring this neck to this side, okay? So I'm gonna use this carbon paper. This is what works best for me. If you can just use your tracing wheel and it works for you, that's fine. Some people like use a Sharpie, and I'm also marking where the shoulder meets the neck right there. So just leave that trace there. So does everyone see how that got traced? So now I'm just gonna true that up. This is where you need this. I had them order a class set, so there should be a set of these here somewhere. Everyone should be using this. If I'm using it, this is what you should use, okay? For this class. So now I'm going to true that up. Okay, and then I'm gonna take this and just square this out a little bit, okay? So now this is where it gets fun. So you get to design a little bit. So we're gonna design our lapel, okay? So this is where you get to draw this red line here, all right? And then a little side note, there's different ways to do this, to draft this. I'm showing you a way, and I like this way because it can be complicated and intimidating, but this way is not, I don't think it's as complicated and intimidating. So I'm gonna figure out, and I'm gonna draw it in red just so that I like seeing what it is, where I want it. So I don't want you guys to like do something too crazy because we're all just learning right now. So whatever I'm doing something kind of standard, not too crazy. So you guys are gonna do something kind of standard too. It needs to, yeah, for a standard look, it's gonna come up to this point here for a standard look, you know, if you want to have your gorge lower, remember I was talking about different gorge heights, that's when you're like designing, doing something different. We're all kind of doing the same thing, something standard right now because we're learning. So I'm just gonna do something sort of standard. I like a big wide lapel, so we can play with that a little bit. So, oopsie, that happens to me all the time. So there is the end of my lapel line. And then I'm just gonna draw it straight back. So I'm gonna connect that point to this point, okay? And that's my gorge, like that, okay? Now I'm gonna have everyone's gonna do the same thing. We're gonna measure on this gorge line back 1.25 inches. So again, this is another variation where designers do their own thing. This is the notch. You can make it bigger, smaller, but we're all gonna do 1.25 inches. So I'm just marking that on here, okay? And then I'm gonna angle it out, and I'm gonna go out 1.25 inches. So I'm up on my gorge line 1.25 inches, and I'm gonna go out 1.25 inches, and all you guys are gonna do the same. So the angle, your angle might be different than my angle. You know, that's okay, slightly different. So just gonna kind of do something standard, and then I'm gonna put a little square right there. So that's my notch right there, and this is the start of my undercollar. Do you see that right here? Okay. So everyone's gonna keep it the same. So for your midterm though, you can, final, if you wanna do a rounded, right? You would round this off, right? And you'd have a rounded notch, and you'd round this one. You can make a peaked lapel that's like a sharper, you know, a real sharp peak, you know, something very Victorian or dramatic. Okay, but that's for the final. That's when you start designing and you're gonna do something different. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've done this now. Now we need to come up here and we're gonna start addressing the collar. So from this point, we're gonna measure out 3/8. So this is that where my where I trace my neck and where my shoulder hit the neck, and I'm going to measure out 3/8. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to take my ruler, my straight ruler, and I'm going to connect that point to this neck curve, where it just, you know, just like this. So I just want to connect this to the curve with a straight line. All right? Like that. And then I'm going to actually just extend that line out. So, okay, so after you connect that, we're going to just extend it out like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 inches. Okay? Now we're going to measure the back neck on your torso. So we used our front, then you're going to need your back, because you're going to have to measure your back neck, this, okay? I already measured mine, it's 3.25. So from this point, I'm going to measure out 3.25. And I'm going to mark it like that. So this is 3.25. And it's my back neck. And then from this point, I'm going to measure towards the center front 1/4 inch. Because now we're shaping our back neck. So there's my 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to take my French curve again and curve that back into the shoulder. Do you guys see that? So we want to make this nice curve for our back neck. Okay. now I'm gonna I need to figure out the width of my collar. So here's my undercollar, and you want to figure out what your roll is going to be, right? So this is the roll. On this one, it's 1.5 inches. So that means they have to do 1.5 inches plus another 1.5 inches plus seam allowance. So kind of similar to the elastic on the waistband, we had to double the elastic and add seam allowance, the width of the elastic. So the same with this. So for my sample, what do you guys for my sample over there, I only did a 1-inch roll. Okay, so let's try 1.5. Let's make it wider and see what happens. You guys can do 1.5 or 1. Okay. So if I'm gonna do 1.5, I have to double it, so that's 3 plus seam allowance plus my 1/4 inch for seam allowance. So 3.5, 3.25, sorry. So I'm gonna start here. This is gonna be my center back, this little bit here. 1, 2, 3.25. So that's, and I'm just squaring it out like that. And then I'm going to be measuring, actually, it needs to be squared, and I didn't make it square. It's kind of angled. Make sure it's squared, because this is going to be your center back. And now I'm gonna just measure on this line here out 3.25 to create my collar. So I'm actually gonna draw this in red so it's easier to see what I am measuring out from. Okay, and this is a straight line. Okay, so now I can see that better. So 1, 2, 3.25. So I'm gonna keep doing 3.25 until I get to my shoulder area, and then I'm gonna use my French curve, and I'm gonna connect this point to this with a curve. This is that curve right here, okay? Okay. So there's this is gonna be my collar. My undercollar, and then from the undercollar you draft your top collar, right? So top collar, undercollar. You guys have been doing that in your advanced sewing. So the important things to notch are this point right here. I want to have this notched right here, and we want to have it notched on the collar too, the lapel and the collar, and we want to have this is my shoulder notch. That's really important to notch that as well. So these 2 notches are really important. So I know it's kind of hard to see. I hope you guys aren't confused, because we like, you are? So this is my center back, right? And this is gonna be on the fold. Okay. And this is my nice curve. So after after you've done this, then you take a piece of pattern paper and you trace over it. So, what are your questions? You're confused? Are you confused? Are you good? This bump in here, but I'm just gonna leave it for now. So now I'm gonna trace that off, okay? So this is my grain line, this is my center back. So I wanna make sure that's on grain. I'm just gonna cut a piece of paper. Now I'm just tracing and making those pieces that I showed you. Easy peasy. It's not too bad. Turn this like this. And draw a green line. Don't want to waste paper if I can help it. So I'm just putting my grain line over my center back, and now I'm just tracing my piece. And I'm kind of truing it as I trace because I didn't like that. And then this is just a straight line, so I'm gonna draw that with my ruler. This is a straight line too. This is a curve, so I'm using my dashes. And then I want to put my notches in. So remember, this is my shoulder notch. And this notch is important where it connects to the lapel. Okay. So there is my pattern. And I'm going to draw in my grain line. It's on the fold. We're going to keep this guy on the fold. And so this is my little draft, so we can just call this a draft. That's what you guys are doing today. And if you want to mark, it's helpful, I recommend marking these points. That's shoulder, this is where it connects to the lapel, this is my undercollar, so you know what things are. And then I'm gonna just add seam allowance. I'm only gonna add seam allowance to the neckline because I wanna see how this looks when I put it on the muslin without seam allowance, so I can get a true representation of how it looks sewn. If I have the seam allowance on there, then it's not the exact size, right? Does that make sense? And then I'm gonna need seam allowance here too. So then you guys just cut it out, and that's your, then you can start, cut it out in muslin and sew up your test muslin. Does that make sense on that piece? Any questions on my dress form? So Stephanie, can you bring the dress form over here? Seam allowance on this edge, right? So it's not showing me the true finished look of the collar, right, Daniel? It's got an extra 1/4 inch on it. So it's deceiving to me. I can't tell if I should add or subtract, right? So that's my my design choice. I don't want to have seam. You could fold it under, you know, iron it under and do that. I could have done that. So, but it's easier just to leave the seam allowance off, and then I don't waste muslin, and then I don't have to fold it over either. And I can see the true collar, right? Does everyone make sense? Does that make sense to everyone?
So you're just gonna stitch it. Instead of the seam allowance, when you're ready to do it, you just fold this under. Because it doesn't have to. This is the back. This is the undercollar.
Yeah, this is the undercolor.
Okay, so it's gonna attach to the one.
I haven't made the top color yet.
Okay.
This is you don't want to draft the top color until you check your undercolor. Why start drafting your top color and have all that work done and you haven't even checked it to see how it's fitting? Because this, you might want this to roll lower. You might want a higher roll. You might want it to be 2 inches. So if this one, remember I measured, this one's 1.5 inches. Maybe you want it 2 inches. You want it up higher on the neck and more stylish. Maybe you want it lower. Maybe this is too tight. So, you know, look at how this is tight right here. Part of it's because there's seam allowance. But if this is hitting your shoulder like that, you're gonna have to, and pulling, you have to slash and spread. Do you remember doing this in beginning pattern making? Making collars? So did you just see how that relaxed? So like that's what this test muslin is. You're checking it, you're seeing how it looks, and that's what we're doing right now. I'm showing you how to draft this and test this. Because when you do your final and you come up with your own design, you're gonna have maybe a really high roll, right? Or something narrow, I don't know. But you wanna test it, and if you need to make this spread more, you can. I mean, I was having issues with my shoulder here, so I'm not sure if I just cut it too big or if what happened here, but something was wrong. So, and then you can see how it looks. Do I like this notch or not? Do I want it bigger? Do I want it more peaked? Do I want my roll line different? Do I want my break point up here? Maybe I want my break point up here. Maybe I want my break point down at the waist, down here. So these are all, maybe I want my lapel to come out way out here, or maybe smaller, right? So you can kind of play around with this, okay? Does that make sense? Actually, I don't think I don't need seam allowance here either. Yeah. So that's your undercollar, right? So now I'm gonna trace this, but before I trace this, I have to transfer this to the other side, okay? So to do that, I need to fold on the line again. And use this guy. So now I'm gonna true this up because my hand is wobbly. And finish transferring my lapel to this side. Okay, so there is this guy. So I know it's hard to see. So this was this pattern piece, right? So now we're gonna trace this. This is my front bodice, okay? And this, do you see that? Yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna take another piece of paper and lay it on top and trace this one off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Literally just tracing. You guys know how to do that. You don't need me to demo that, right?
Lola.
Okay. So do you see what you're tracing?
Yeah.
Is that clear? It's this entire piece. So what do you need to notch? Because that's important.
Dart.
You got to have all your darts, but you need to have your break point marked and where your buttonhole. It's helpful to have this roll line, usually so on mine I have the dotted line. I forgot to transfer it, so this is what I was trying to get you to tell me. This notch is important. So I didn't transfer that when I traced. I have it on my draft. So that's what I want you guys not to forget, because when you're sewing, it's gonna be, you're not gonna know where that connection is. It helps. There it is. Okay, so you want to have this notched, so when you're sewing you know where this is going to connect. Okay, so it's going to end up looking something like this. Right, so that's it for today. Next week I'm going to show you how to do some